Hi, my name is Billy Jackson, and I teach mathematics at North Shore Community College. This lesson is going to teach you how to convert fractions into decimals. Fractions and decimals are just two different ways to express numbers that involve parts of a whole. So fractions and decimals sometimes can actually be equivalent, and they can just be two different ways to express the same type of quantity. So let's see a couple basic examples that you may be familiar with. Probably the most basic fraction out there is the fraction 1/2. And some of you may be familiar with 1/2 equals 0.5. Another fraction people may be familiar with is 1/4. And 1/4 has a decimal equivalent of 0.25. A lot of people are familiar with these two because of money. When you think of half a dollar, you probably think of 50 cents or 0.5. If you think of a quarter, then you probably think of 0.25 or 25 cents. Now these two things that are equal, 0.5 and 1/2, are not different. They're actually equal in value. All they are two different ways to express this quantity. So now we're going to go on and we're going to learn a more general way to convert fractions into decimals that you may not be entirely familiar with, like these two examples here. So in this example, we're going to learn how to convert 3/8 into a decimal. So to convert fractions into decimals, first you divide the numerator by the denominator. So we're going to set this up as a division problem. And that should kind of make sense, because this division bar right here is another way that you can represent division. I'm sorry, the fraction bar is another way that you can represent division. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the top divided by the bottom. So we're going to set this up like a division problem. We're going to set this up as 3 divided by 8. And this is the procedure you take to convert a fraction into a decimal. Now, 8 cannot go into 3, so 8 goes into 3 0 times, we say. So the way to keep going with this is we're going to add a decimal point after the 3 and add zeros after the decimal point. So now we'll bring that decimal point right above it in our quotient. And 8 goes into 30, let's see, 3 times. And we know 3 times 8 is 24. Subtract and you get 6. So if you look up in the instructions above, it'll say continue dividing until you get a remainder of 0, or you have sufficient digits in the quotient to round to your desired place value. So I didn't give you a desired place value to round to, so let's just keep dividing until we get a remainder of 0. So we'll keep adding zeros and bringing them down. So now 8 goes into 60 how many times? 7 times. Then 7 times 8 is 56. We'll subtract and we get 4. Again, we still don't have a remainder of 0, so we're going to bring down another 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times, and 8 times 5 is 40, so we subtract, and now we finally have no remainder. So this right here is our final answer, 0.375. That is what the fraction 3/8 equals as a decimal. Let's do another example. Okay, we're going to convert 4/11 into a decimal. We're going to do the same procedure as we did before. We're going to do the top 4 divided by the bottom 11. Okay, so we'll do the top number always goes inside, and the bottom number always goes outside. And we're going to divide until we get a remainder of 0, or we have sufficient digits in the quotient to round to our desired place value. And for this example, I gave you a desired place value of the thousandths place. All right, so let's get started. We can't divide 11 into 4, so I'll put a 0 up there. And I'll add a decimal point after the 4. Now I can start adding zeros after the decimal point. So 11 goes, let me put that decimal point up there. Make sure those decimal points are lined up. So 11 goes into 40 3 times. 3 times 11 is 33. And I subtract, and I am left with 7. Now I'll add another 0 and bring it down. 11 goes into 70 6 times. 6 times 11 is 66, and I'm left with a remainder of 4. You'll see that it's really important here to be really sharp with your multiplication times tables and long division, because that's a very crucial part of these problems. So, where was I? I had a remainder of 4. So now I'm going to add another 0 and bring it down. And 11 goes into 40 3 times. 3 times 11 is 33. And I have 7 left over. And I wanted to round to the nearest thousandths place. So I have up to the thousandths place in my quotient, but in order to round to the thousandths place, I need to go one more digit over, right? Because, for instance, if this next digit was a 2, well, then my answer would be 0.363. But if my next digit was, say, a 9, then I would round that up to 0.364. So we need to go one more place beyond the thousandths. That way we can be able to round appropriately. So I'll add one more 0 and bring it down. 70. And it looks like I'm running out of room at the bottom here. So 70 can go into 11, or I'm sorry, 11 goes into 70 6 times. And 6 times 11 is 66. All right, so now I can stop my division, and I have enough place values here so that I can round this answer appropriately. I want to round to the thousandths place, and the digit to the right of that is a 6, so that means my final answer will be 0.364 after I round up. All right, great. Let's move on to another example. This one is slightly different. I want to convert 3 1/7 into a decimal. So here I have a mixed number. Before I get started on this, let me ask you a question that maybe you're familiar with. I actually gave this to a student the other day when I brought this topic up. I said, can you tell me what 6 1/2 is as a decimal? And she told me, well, it's 6.5. I said, all right, so we're going to use that intuition to help us in this problem. Notice the 6 represented a whole, right? So 6 is just going to be the part of your number before the decimal point, to the left of the decimal point. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the fractional part, and that is going to represent the part, which is everything to the right of our decimal point. Okay? So now we're going to try to convert this fraction 3 1/7. Oops, get the fraction bar in there. 3 1/7 into a decimal. So this is going to look something like 3 point whatever this 1/7 gives us as a decimal. Okay, so let's find out what that 1/7 is as a decimal. Just like before, we're going to set this up as the top divided by the bottom. So the top goes inside the division symbol, and the 7 goes outside of it. And we're going to divide until we get a remainder of 0, or we have sufficient digits, that way we can round to the desired place value, which in our example is the thousandths place. So let's begin. 7 cannot go into 1. It goes into 1 0 times. So let's add a decimal point here, and we'll do that in our quotient above also, and add a 0. So 7 goes into 10 one time, minus 7 is 3. Now I'll add another 0 and bring it down. 7 goes into 30. Let's see. 4 times. 4 times 7 is 28. And then we subtract and we get 2. So I'll add another 0 and bring it down. 7 goes into 22 times. 2 times 7 is 14. I subtract, and then I get 6. And you'll see I have up to my thousandths place in my decimal, but I need to go one decimal place further, because if this was a 1, then I would round 0.142 down. But if this next digit was something like an 8, I would have to then round up. So I got to find out what that next digit is. All right, so where were we? We had a remainder of 6 so far. And we're going to add one more 0 and bring it down. So 7 goes into 60 how many times? 8 times. Because 8 times 7 is 56. Okay, so now we have sufficient digits to round to our desired place value. So 0.1428 rounded to the nearest thousandths place, because of this 8, will get bumped up to 0.143. But we have to remember something very important about this problem, is that we weren't converting the fraction 1/7 into a decimal, we were converting 3 1/7 into a decimal. So like we did in that example about the 6.5, we're going to not say the answer is 0.143, but 3.143. And that's our final answer. All right, now you try an example. Pause the video and try to solve this problem, which is converting the fraction 2/9 into its decimal form, and round to the nearest thousandth if you do not get a remainder of 0. Pause the video and try this example, and then when you press play again, I'll show you my answer, and we can see if our answers match up. All right, let's see how you did. So we're going to do the fraction 2/9. And we're going to do the numerator divided by the denominator. So the numerator goes inside, the denominator goes outside. And I'm going to work through this example a little bit quickly, since we've already done a few together. So 9 cannot go into 2, it goes in 0 times. So I'll add the decimal point here, add a 0 after in my dividend. And 9 goes into 20 2 times. Multiply, you get 18. Subtract, and you get 2. Now I'll add another 0 and bring it down. So 9 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 9 is 18. And we subtract, and I get 2 again. Seems a little repetitive here. I'll add another 0, bring it down. 9 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 19, again, is 18. Subtract, and you get 2. It seems like the same pattern keeps happening over and over again. And that happens sometimes when you when you turn fractions into decimals. So we need to go one more place over. That way we can round to the nearest thousandth. So we'll bring down one more 0. 9 goes into 20 2 times. And 2 times 9 is 18. Subtract, and we get 2 again. So we can now round this to the nearest thousandths place, which will be 0.222. When you have, so this is the answer rounded to the nearest thousandth place, which is what what I asked of you. Another way to do this is you'll notice that this pattern keeps reoccurring, and these 2's go on forever. And common notation to deal with that is we take whatever repeats itself, which in this case is the 2, and we put a bar over it. And that tells us that that 2 keeps repeating itself over and over forever. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon.